This is The High Road with author and registered psychotherapist, Dr. Marlene Bishop. Dr. Marlene speaks to the heart of people who need to be lifted up and get out of the muck and mire that often accompanies major life changes, such as divorce or separation. Dr. Marlene will aspire to help parents of divorce to love their children more than they hate their ex, and to learn to take the high road. So please welcome the host of The High Road, Dr. Marlene.
Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. Welcome, George.
Great to be with you again, Dr. Marlene, and good morning, at least in our time zone.
Yes. Yes, indeed. And I'm ready for a break from this heat. Where we are, we've got heat. Well, I think the whole country's got heat.
Well, I think you feel that way because you've been in court a lot.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that is so true. That is so true. I was just sharing that I spent the whole day there basically yesterday past 5 o'clock. And so, yeah, you do feel the heat that way, a different kind of heat than we're talking or than what I'm talking about. But anyway, let's get going. So today I wanted to talk about, and this is more your area than mine. I always say I know enough to be dangerous about stuff like this, but I wanted to talk about decision making and explain that a little bit to people because the clients I work with have some real misconceptions about decision making. And so I thought it would be good, and I'm going to give some examples of issues that have come up. But I think it behooves us to explain decision making a little bit. And I don't know if you want to jump in because this is kind of more your area than mine.
Well, the decision making is one piece of a parenting plan, or if not a parenting plan, a court order. And there's two main pieces to that puzzle. One is decision making authority, and the other is parenting time. So the decision making gives a parent or the parents decision making authority with regard to several principal areas: medical care, religious upbringing, if any, educational decisions. And the religious piece is a little bit misleading because even if a parent doesn't have decision making authority, they can take a child with them to church.
Yes.
And our higher courts have held that unless there's actual harm involved, it's okay for a parent to take a child to church of their choice, even if they don't have that piece of the decision-making pie. So the religious piece is a little bit fuzzy, I guess would be the way to say that. Um, the medical piece is fuzzy in the sense that if there's an emergency, any parent can get care or treatment for a child in an emergency situation. Absent an emergency situation, medical decisions belong to the parent who has the decision-making authority over medical. The court can allocate decision-making. It doesn't have to give them all to one parent. It can give some decision-making to one parent, some decision-making to another parent. But that's really the allocation of authority, if you will, with some fuzziness around the edges on certain emergencies or going to church, or there are certain things that fall outside the scope of the decision-making authority.
Yes. Well, and I'll comment on a couple of things. And then what I usually tell people, I will share with the audience. And then you can tell me if I'm incorrect, because I actually may be telling it incorrectly. And I just learned something. And that's why I said this is more your area. You know, parenting time is what I deal with and work with. Decision making, not so much. That's kind of more the role of the attorney. But what I tell people, because I do have to deal with it all the time, I tell them that when it comes to, for example, religious decision making, and this is the thing I learned today that I didn't know, is I did not know that even if you don't have any decision making authority, you can still take them where you want to church. And that makes sense. What I tell people is because it's not a major decision to go to church on any given Sunday or Saturday night or whenever the church meets. I tell people on your weekend, you can take them where you want. On your weekend, you can take them where you want or no place at all if they choose not to go. I think, and this is where, correct me if I'm wrong, that things like baptisms, does that need to be agreed on? Because that's what I tell people is if it's major, then, and that I think that holds true across all four areas. I actually have a fourth area in my mind. It may not technically be or formally be a fourth area, and it's what I'll probably spend the most time on today because it's where I have the most problems with my parents. But that's extracurricular activities. So we have education, we have religion, we have medical and mental health, and then extracurricular activities. We'll come back to that. But anyway, back to church. Am I correct that if it's something major like a baptism, then it should be joint, or is that not correct?
I think that if a parent has the decision-making authority, then the parent who has that decision-making authority with regard to religion can do what they want to with regard to baptisms or ordinations or ceremonial activities in the place of religion.
Okay. Okay. And I think that's basically, what I tell them. What I tell them is if nothing else, and this just is my kind of go to thing, if nothing else, as a courtesy, let the other parent know. I
Yeah.
understand. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say definitely, and of course, if we have parents who are taking the high road, then that parent is probably going to notify the other parent of the occurrence or the ceremony or whatever celebration or religious observation is occurring, and then they're going to be invited, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it, to attend those types of ceremonies.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I would totally agree. And that's what I tell them is would you want to be left out?
Mm.
Tell them, invite them, like you said, take the high road. I mean, that's what we're trying to help people with here is taking the high road. And the one I run into a lot is we will have, and I, hate to mention the specific denomination, if you will, but we have a specific denomination that often people in that of that denomination, I guess I should say, want to make sure the children go to that type church every week. Well, we can't make them do that unless that parent has sole decision making. But what I'm hearing today is that's more a day in, day out, day to day, what we call day to day decision. And if somebody's going to their church and they want to take them, they can,
Mhm.
basically, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. But I
Yeah,
do get people, yeah, go ahead.
I had a case where we actually went to a hearing on whether or not the non-decision making parent could take a child to the church of, in this case, it was dad, uh, of his choice. And we actually had a mental health professional do an evaluation and the whole regalia
Wow.
there. And and it just turned out that dad could take the daughter to the church of his choice on his weekend. And
Yes, I would think.
yeah, and really you get the kids, I don't think, care about little doctrinal differences
No.
in religions. They just go, mom and dad say we're going to church, they go to church or synagogue or whatever the case might be.
Mhm. Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. They usually don't, usually don't care at all. It's the parents who get real worked up over it. And like I said, there's certain denominations that that parent believes they've got to be in that particular church every week and they can't miss. And especially when they're going through things like a catechism class or confirmation or something like that. It's like, well, they have to be there every week. And I'm like, well, you're not going to be able to enforce that unless the other person agrees. And this is where it behooves parents to work together, because if it really means that much to you, be kind to the other parent, work with the other parent. You know, I am amazed every day that I see parents just be hateful and hostile, and then they want to ask the other parent for a favor. And it's like, yeah, it's like, how did you think that was going to go? How did you think they were going to answer? You know?
Yeah,
So,
I think
yeah.
if particularly where there are very significant celebrations in certain religions, like bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, things like that,
Hmm.
uh, that's really something where I think the child would appreciate both parents being present and
Yes.
civil with each other.
Yes. Yes. And same with their baptism. When middle school age kids, because that's kind of the age at which they often allow kids or encourage kids to make their own decision about baptism. If they weren't, or even if they were baptized as a baby, they often will make their own decision about that and be baptized. And most kids I know do want both parents to be there. Now, once in a while, the conflict will be so high that the child will say, I don't want them both there.
Mhm.
One or the other, they often don't care which, but they don't want both of them there because if they have contact, they know it means trouble. And this is just tragic. This is tragic. This is why we do what we do here and encourage people to take the high road and learn to get over it. Learn to love your children more than you hate your ex, because it just isn't worth what we put the kids through, to have these kind of arguments.
Well, and I think sometimes parents are very short-sighted. There are going to be celebrations, even a wedding, if I could say that,
Yeah.
where even after the children are technically adults, it would be nice to be able to have their parents at those types of celebrations and ceremonies without hostility.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
think the seeds for that type of relationship are sown uh, at the time of or shortly after the divorce takes place. And the
Yes.
parents either set a tone for cooperation, collaboration, or hostility.
Well, and speaking of after the divorce is final or at that time, I can't tell you, I can't explain this phenomenon at all, but I can't tell you how many cases I've seen that they are just in high conflict and they're battling and they have their final orders hearing. And it doesn't mean they always got what they wanted, but they seem to be able to walk out of that courtroom and now suddenly be civil. And I think it's just it being over. I think things that are unresolved or undetermined are much more difficult for people to deal with than if you just know the outcome. The anticipation can be, painful.
Yes, and really, I'm surprised if somebody walks out of a final orders hearing or trial in a divorce case and they're pleased with the outcome. I
Right.
don't see many people who are pleased with the outcome.
No.
Uh, they ask questions, they don't understand the outcome, or they're upset with the outcome. So again, if parents want to keep some semblance of control over their own lives and work to uh, cooperate for the benefit of their children, then they need to stay out of the courthouse.
Right. Right. Exactly. Well, and to that point of, or, it's a similar point I'm going to make here. A similar experience I have, two parents walking out and neither one being happy. Because I know I've heard you say before, and I've heard judges say it too, but you have talked about how judges will say, if you both leave here unhappy, I did my job.
Yes,
Not
definitely.
that we're trying to make people unhappy, but nobody's going to get everything they want. And so they're both going to leave somewhat unhappy because there was something they didn't get that they wanted. But it will be both parents. Well, I had a conversation with a dad last night, and he said, I just kind of feel like you're not on my side. And I said, oh my gosh, mom said that yesterday. And she had the day before, mom had said that, I feel like you're on his side. Now, last night I'm talking to him and he said, I just don't feel like you're on my side, implying I'm on her side. And I told him that she said the same thing. I said, what's interesting is she just said that yesterday. And this tells me I'm doing my job. If you both feel like I'm not on your side, because you're right, I'm not on anyone's side. I am here to make it best for the kids. If I'm on anyone's side, it's the kids' side.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're on the kid's side brilliantly. And
Oh, thank you.
if a parent is sabotaging the case where the kids are suffering, they're going to suffer your wrath if you're on the
Yes,
case.
yes, that's right. They are. Yeah, I don't mince words when it comes to kids not being okay and kids being put in the middle and not being allowed to love both parents and all those things. That's just not okay. It's not. I mean, it's my life's work. Being a child of divorce in a relatively civil divorce is still hard. I mean, it was hard enough going through it with decent parents or parents who handled it decently.
Mhm.
That I can't imagine what it's like to be some of these kids and their parents are fighting over all these things, everything we're talking about. And I can't wait. I'm going to wait until we take a break so I don't get interrupted. But I can't wait to talk about some of the other areas of decision making here because I've got a couple of stories to share that are just unbelievable to me. And they're not worst of the worst, but they're bad enough, let's put it that way. And it amazes me every day that parents can behave the way they do and not take their children into consideration, even if it means you have to take the high road, even if it means things aren't fair, because they may not be. But if you're protecting your child, shielding them from conflict, stuff like that, that's the best you can do.
Well, I I wish I could identify something magical about which parents can take the high road and what the impediment is to taking the high road for those who can't. Um,
Me
but
too.
it 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 sows the seeds for whether those children, when they reach teenage years, whether they're going to want to absent themselves from their parents.
Yes. Yes. And parents don't realize that, but they absolutely do. Kids make up their minds and tell me in my office all the time, when I get to be 18, I'm not talking to either one of them, or something to that effect. So anyway, we'll talk more about that when we come back. It is time to take a quick break. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. We'll be right back.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to easysense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's easysense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
Welcome back. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. Before we went to break, we were talking about, sorry about that, decision making, and I'm going to move on to the next one because I have some stories to tell about some of this stuff. And I think stories of real life examples are important because it kind of drives home the point of what we're talking about. It's one thing to understand it theoretically, but to understand it practically is a whole other aspect. And so the one that I get has to do with like medical and mental health decision making. And if I could emphasize one thing about all areas of decision making, and I think we said this earlier, but I'm going to drive it home, is we're talking about major decisions, not day to day, major. And so with medical and mental health, I get calls, and I'm going to be honest, not to pick on guys. I'm a big dad advocate in the courts, to be honest. I'm a parent advocate. I'm not a dad advocate. I'm a parent advocate. Not as much as I'm a kid advocate, but anyway.
I was going to say, I think your premier role is a kid advocate, and
Yes.
the parent who runs afoul of that is in for a hard time.
Yes, they are. They are. But in this case, it tends to be, for whatever reason, dads. And maybe it's because when they were together, mom was more the decision maker about things like this. That I'll get this call from a dad. My ex kept our son home from school today because he's sick, and she didn't consult me about it, and we have joint decision making. Or she took him or didn't take him to the doctor, and we have joint decision making. That's a day-to-day decision. Whoever has the child decides if they're sick enough to stay home or not, whether they are so sick they have to go to the doctor or not. And again, as a courtesy, I always tell parents, let the other parent know. Maybe they were going to show up at school that day for something to take them lunch or, whatever. Um, but it's also just a courtesy. Let them know your kid is sick. Sometimes the school will have a system where they notify parents by text message or email that your child's out today. Please excuse the absence if there's a legitimate reason or whatever. And so the other parent might not know what's going on. And they're like, you know, Bobby's not in school today. What's the deal? So always let them know. And it can just be a simple message, text message, or on an app that says, Bobby's home from school today, not feeling well, upset stomach. I might take him to the doctor if he gets any worse. If I do, I'll let you know, and I'll let you know what the doctor says. That's usually all it takes. But there's also some schools, especially high schools, that the parent portal will show you if they're not in their class for each hour, each class. And so the other parent might have called them in sick, but now for each class, it pings you that your child's not here. Next hour, your child's not here. Well, yeah, they're out the whole day because they're sick. But if you're the parent who is getting pinged and you haven't been told that they're out, you're wondering what's going on. So, as a courtesy, we should notify the other parent. But this is not a major decision. And I'll let you take it from here. But please
Well,
confirm that.
I agree 100% with what you've
Yeah.
said, and the other thing that occurs to me that I really did not have access to, I didn't have this opportunity to have a parent coordinator decision maker. That to me is a tremendous, tremendous asset to have on a case. Even parents who are taking the high road can hit a bump now and then, and to have the resource and the access to a parent coordinator decision maker is invaluable. But
Mhm.
you're absolutely right. And in cases of emergency, it's the same thing. The parent who has the child
Yes.
has the ability to act appropriately in an emergency.
Right. And let's talk about that for a minute. I am so glad you brought that up because I will also get complaints from parents because they just left the ER and my ex is just now telling me that he took my child to the ER. Shouldn't they have told me on the way? Well, ideally, yes. But if you've got a sick or injured child, you're just trying to get there. You're not worried about, oh, yeah, let me let the other parent know. Same with once you get there, because I'll have parents also say, I understand not telling me while you're driving there, but once they get inside, shouldn't they tell me immediately? Well, maybe, but there's going to be paperwork to fill out. You're going to want to go back with your child to see the doctor, most likely. So you arrive and it's very frantic and hectic. I mean, I went myself a couple weeks ago to the ER for a symptom I was having, and I can tell you how hectic and frantic it is. And they're
Mhm.
just trying to take care of people, not knowing how urgent it might be. And so it becomes very hectic. And so, no, they can't necessarily let you know once they step inside. If they let you know on the ride home, I think that's actually pretty darn good.
Yeah,
But
I've been in an emergency room a little bit the last few weeks, and it is hectic. And
okay,
I don't think a
yeah,
parent who is kind of hovering over a child who is in an emergency room situation, they're not really thinking about things other than how is my child doing.
right.
They're not thinking about, oh gee, I better call and notify my ex and so forth. They're really just very, very concerned about their child And once the child is stabilized or um, taken care of medically, I think notifying the other parent at that point in time, if they haven't notified them earlier, is critical.
Right, right. Yeah, just let them know. No parent wants to hear from their child that they were in the ER. No parent wants to hear that from their child. They want to hear it from the other parent as soon as reasonably possible. But reasonably is the operative word there. I mean, I've got parents, like I said, that just are not reasonable. And then I've got others that clearly don't want to let the other parent know and will let the child tell them. And that's just bad co parenting.
Mhm. Yeah, I think once you've made the child the messenger or the go-between, you've crossed the line there.
Yes. Yes, I totally agree. I've said this before and I'll say it again. In the level 2 co parenting class in particular, it's in 3 different handouts. And I call it the golden rule of co parenting that we will not communicate through the kids. They're not our messengers, and we are not going to communicate through them. And I am firm about that. You want to see Miss Marlene get upset, you'll communicate through your kids because I'll put a stop to it.
Well, that and the other thing that occurs to me that is very sad is when the parent either I would say unknowingly. I can't imagine a parent knowing they're doing this, but I guess there are some who do, but they make the child the emotional caretaker of the parent. That is
Yes,
very problematic. I have a hard time with that.
I do too. And that's another really good point is they are not your caretaker. And they should not hear how sad you are, how mad you are, how anything. They shouldn't hear it.
No, and again, there are so many choices nowadays with apps and email and texting and so forth.
Yes,
There's really no justification not to have a parent in the loop of something going on with their child.
right, right. Let's move on to school because education is school. Education is another area of decision making. And again, George, I'm going to put out there what I understand, and then you're either going to confirm or correct me. Okay. But this is what I tell parents. And again, this is kind of not my role, but it is. And that's why I want to make sure I'm telling people correctly. But in my experience, and I do tell them in my experience, when it comes to education, the default for what school a child is going to go to, if the parents can't agree, is the public school that is in, if there is a primary parent, the primary parent's um, district or area. And if you want a private school, you have to agree. The court's not going to order, in my experience, a private school. So, first of all, tell me if that's correct, and then I'll tell you what I do with this. But is that correct?
Yes, I think that's totally correct.
Okay. And that's been my experience too. But what I tell parents is find out what the other parent's objection is. Is it the cost of this private school? Is it proximity from the other parent's home to the school? And if it means that much to a parent that the child goes there, the parent can negotiate those things. They can offer to pay more than half of the cost. They can offer to drive part of the time on the other parent's time. But you've got to find out what the issue is and then try to negotiate it if it means that much to you. What too many parents want to do that usually doesn't get done for them is they want to tell the other parent, You're going to take them to this particular school and you're going to pay half. And if the other parent doesn't agree, no, they're not going to pay half and they don't have to take them. The default will be the public school in the area where the child is the majority of the time during the school week.
Yeah, I think that just makes sense, really. That's to someone outside the conflict, that's almost obvious.
Right, right. Well, and I'll tell you another thing they start fighting about. So if it's totally equal, 50-50, week on, week off, and the parents have an equal number of school days with the child, they will start fighting about wanting the school that's nearest to them. So mom wants the school nearest her, dad wants the school nearest him. And what I have actually had the court do, and it's been on more than one occasion, is they will have me pick a school that is halfway, roughly, in between the parents' homes and choice the child into that school. And what I mean by that is here we have to get a permit to go to a school outside of one of the parents' houses.
Mhm.
And so they'll have me find a school and then let's permit them in. And it'll be roughly equal distance between the two parents' houses.
How
So,
much
yeah.
how much say should the child have in that decision, Dr. Marlene?
Well, I'm glad you asked because I was just going to say what I typically do is take the child and visit the school and say, how do you feel here? And if kids tell me, for example, that they've got more friends in the school by mom's house and fewer friends at the school by dad's house, there's just more kids in the neighborhood. Maybe that parent stayed in what had been the family home and the kid wants to go to school there, then I recommend, or if I'm decision maker, make the decision that the child goes to that school because this isn't for the convenience of the parents. It's for the best interest of the child. And if a child wants to go to a certain school and it's reasonable and I can make that happen, that's what I do. So great question.
I think that's important to consider.
Mhm.
Uh, Once again, the children need a voice, but they don't get a seat at the table, if you will.
Right, right. And they shouldn't have to make those decisions unless they have strong opinions, one way or the other. If a child feels strongly about a school, then I'm going to listen to that. I'm going to ask why. I want to make sure it's a sound reason. But as long as it's reasonable, if it's I've got more friends there or whatever, yeah, that's reasonable.
Yeah, or I have a particular coach that I am close to, or that social capital that's built is important, and the child is helpless in a conflict like that. And
Hmm.
I would imagine it's detrimental to be caught up in that conflict, as in any parental conflict.
Yes. Yes, it is. It is detrimental. And you also get kids, this is not unusual, and I hope the parents out there are listening. The kids will say one thing with mom and another thing with dad. And the parent each says, they tell me they want to go to my school, the school by my house. Yep, they told the other parent that too. They're
Yeah,
trying to please you both. They're trying to please you both. Go ahead.
no, I think that's true, and the child is trying to please the parents, and
Exactly.
that's too bad.
Right. And as I said, they want to please you both. But yes, that's what they're doing. And it shouldn't be that. They should be pleasing themselves. And I don't mean kids get everything they want, but when it comes to school choice, I'm going to weigh pretty heavily in their favor. Okay, time to take another quick break. This is Dr. Marlene and George. and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. We'll be right back.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant, like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. You know, it feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. I want to cover one area of decision making that is the biggest headache for me, George. And I want you to weigh in on this. But here's my life when it comes to decision making, and probably yours too. Not after the divorce, but I'm certain you have dealt with this. Well, maybe after the divorce too, but certainly during the process. I will have a parent, like I was talking about earlier about a school, telling one parent they're going to go here, you're going to take them, you're going to help pay. And I said, no, they're not. They don't have to. This is never more true than with extracurricular activities for the kids. And it is not uncommon for one parent to tell the other, I enrolled Bobby in football. You have to help pay. You have to pay half. And you have to take him to practices and games on your parenting time. And they do not have to. I mean, that is not accurate. And parents really, truly believe it is. Maybe they've always been the parent in charge of that kind of stuff. They enrolled them, they made the decisions, they took them, they whatever. And even if they say, I'll take them if you don't want to, if it's the other parent's parenting time and they don't want the child to go, no, you will not take them. You don't get to go pick up the child on the other parent's time and take them. And so this is what I deal with a lot, is one parent going ahead and enrolling them and then telling the other parent after the fact. And what I tell them is they don't have to take them. They don't have to help pay because they didn't agree. And I have yet to see a parenting time order that does not have a statement in there that the parents will both pay if they agreed. Mm-hmm. And that's the crucial piece that a lot of parents miss, is parents have to agree. It's for activities on which they agree. So tell me if I'm correct on this one.
No, I think you're totally correct. And really, just as a matter of courtesy, you would think that parents who are trying to take the high road would either discuss that or send out a text or an email or something that says Junior is wanting to join the soccer team. It would require us to do XYZ. Are you okay with that? Something
Right.
along that line.
Yes, and that's all it takes. But then that's an agreement.
Right, right, right. And again, the resource of a parent coordinator decision maker is an amazing resource to me. I mean, I wish I had that.
Yes. Well, I appreciate hearing that since it's a role that I frequently fill for the courts. But I agree. I mean, I don't know if I said this earlier on here or not. I might have told you at break, but I'm dealing this morning and during the show with a parent who wants a school decision made. And, it is much easier for me to make it than for them to fight and ultimately go back to court. And you're not going to get into court before school starts, especially right now. Most schools around here start in the next 10 to 14 days, and you will not get a court date that quickly. And here's another important thing to point out while we're talking about all of this stuff is some parents think, well, I'll just file an emergency motion. They've heard that language, that terminology, and they think that you can just file an emergency motion anytime you want and you'll get an emergency hearing. This may not be considered by the court to be an emergency.
No, I agree 100%. And the judge is going to say, your parents, figure it out. Raise your children. Don't bring the issues to me to raise your children for you.
Right, right. Yeah, that's exactly the way it goes. Is if the court has to decide, they're going to do it in their own time, and your emergency does not constitute an emergency for them.
Absolutely true. Poor
Yeah,
planning on your part does not constitute an emergency for the court. And a hearing on something like that is going to take a couple of months to get into
hmm,
court. In the
yeah,
meantime, what do?
right, right. And they do have to do something.
Sure.
And so, yeah, if you truly can't co-parent, get a PCDM, parenting coordinator decision maker on board, because that's going to be your only hope. And there are parents who truly can't. I mean, the one parent is going to disagree to anything the other parent suggests just for the sake of disagreeing, because there is still that much hurt, anger, resentment, maybe feelings of betrayal. And George, I have to tell you, this is where people really, really need to get therapy. You got to get over it. You got to move on. And I know it's not easy. I know. But parents have to do it for the sake of their kids. If it's just you, the parent, and you don't want to deal with it, okay, live in misery. But for your children's sake, you have to. So seek out a good therapist who understands the courts and how they work. I have seen more damage done, or people set back in their recovery because they have a therapist who just does not understand the courts. They're not well versed in how the courts work, and that's more detrimental than helpful.
I think it might be helpful if there were some sort of a criterion that was reflected in the credentials of a mental health professional that showed their familiarity with the court process. That might be helpful
Yes,
because as someone who's just selecting a mental health professional, uh, the person really has no way to tell whether there's familiarity on the part of the mental health professional with the court system.
right, right. And certainly it's a question to ask. And hopefully that
Yeah.
therapist, I mean, ethically, they're bound to be honest with you about that. And I think most therapists would be, but yeah, ask, find out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think perhaps it would be good to have some sort of an orientation that's offered to new
Hmm.
mental health professionals from the courts where they can
Hmm.
go and informally meet with a judge. A judge can go over certain things that are pet peeves of his or hers. And it would really help the newly frocked mental health professional coming into the fray there.
Yes, and that is actually an excellent idea. It really is. I mean, I have talked to other therapists who took a case and knew they were court involved, knew they themselves were not well versed in divorce cases or court involved cases. And, they quickly were in over their head and didn't know how to help the family.
Well, there's no substitute for experience, Dr. Marlene,
Right.
and you have plenty of it.
More than I'd like to admit sometimes. That's correct.
But think of the families whose children you have blessed through your
Oh,
work.
thank you. Thank you. I would like to think I have helped some.
I think that's very significant.
Well, it's important stuff, and it's something that gets kind of overlooked in the divorce process often. And so I'm glad that the courts, I think every state now has something akin to a PC or PCDM. It might have the decision making component, it might not, but they at least, I think, all have parenting coordinators or something like that. And I think it's crucial that people going through a divorce have someone like that that's at least available, even if you don't take advantage of it, at least have it available so people can.
Yeah, I think the court could actually maintain a list of mental health
Hmm.
professionals, and there could be some sort of stipulation for what you have to do to be on that list. But I think it would be very helpful to have the resource to be able to select someone who is knowledgeable about the court system to work in a mental health capacity on the case.
Yes. Because I don't know, honestly, having been a child, or I am a child of divorce, and having been divorced as an adult, I don't know how people get through it in a really healthy way without some assistance, whether it's a PCDM or just a therapist that you go and talk to. But I think those resources are out there, and it's our responsibility to take it upon ourselves to get ourselves and our families the help we need.
And that's one place where I think counsel can be invaluable in assisting
Mhm.
in selecting someone.
Yes, and encouraging parents to use someone.
Absolutely.
Yes. Well, our time goes by fast, at least for me. I could talk longer, but we've got to go. But thank you, George, for doing this with me.
My pleasure, Dr. Marlene. Always insightful. Uh, Great learning experience.
Thank you. Thank you. And we learn from you too. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you've been watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. We'll see you next week.
Tune in to The High Road with host Dr. Marlene and gain insight into how to rise above tough circumstances and learn the skills that will help you take the high road in your life, no matter what challenges might come your way, on the next episode of The High Road.